And at first, it was great. It was something we did together. We had a good time. And then I had 3 children in the middle of all this drinking. And after 15 years, it was not good. It was a horror of a life. We had to move in with my mother because I couldn't take care of my children. And, Bob and I were fighting all the time. My kids were afraid of me, and they never knew who was going to show up, whether it was going to be good mama or bad mama. And I could be both. And when I had the opportunity to have a change, and I didn't know about Alcoholics Anonymous. My mother lived next door to a treatment center. I love how God does, he's always making it easy for us slow learners, So we had a treatment center next door, and I walked around the back fence. I'd already had Bubba committed because he wanted to shoot me. And but he didn't. I'm so glad he didn't. And anyway, I had him committed, but I walked around the back fence and checked myself in because I felt dead inside. And I could, if there was any possibility that I could have any other kind of life besides drinking every day, getting drunk, getting in trouble, having this wall. Alcoholism for me was a wall that was between me and you and me and God, and I couldn't get past it, and I couldn't let my kids in, and I couldn't show them the love that I would have liked to give them. And so I found myself in Alcoholics Anonymous. And as I said, I thought I had God because I had religion. And, when I was 7 months sober, I had nothing. As I said, my sponsor wasn't cutting it. My home group wasn't cutting it. And so I was at a point of desperation again. And Bubba's sponsor, who's a wonderful guy, and he's had the same sponsor since he's been sober too. We don't like to abandon our sponsors, I'll tell you. But anyway, his sponsor said to me, Helen, you're making this thing about God too hard. You need to find something that you believe in, like when you were a kid and you believed in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. And I had some bad experiences as a child. My mother had severe mental illness. I had sexual abuse. And so I thought I was a bad kid. And so Mama said that if I was good, Santa would bring me presents. If I was bad, he'd bring me switches. And I didn't get switches. So I figured Santa Claus knew all about me, and he brought me presents anyway. And I needed a God who was going to forgive me, because the way that I had been living, I felt lower than a snake's belly when I got here. And so that's how I started with a relationship with a higher power. And it was through Santa Claus. And so I don't know how many new people we have here, but y'all are the ones I'd like to talk to. And those of you who have been here for a while, I know I always love a review of how I got to where I'm at today. And it happened through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Bubba messed up my book for me, but anyway. I don't like to use his book because he's got all the wrong stuff underlined, But anyway, so, from the very beginning of the book, we hear about a higher power. we hear about a relationship with a higher power being the miracle that allowed us to get here and not have to pick up a drink again. And, you know, in the doctor's opinion, he talks about it. He said he was describing some of the alcoholics who had found a solution that he had been working with. And he said they believe in themselves and still more in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death. And so Dr. Silkworth, who was a very knowledgeable scientific doctor, was amazed. He was amazed to find that a spiritual solution would be the answer for us. And on the next page, he said, in nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. And on the next page, he says, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, wants a psychic change. So he's gone from the power greater than ourselves to what happens inside of us, which is that psychic change. That the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple steps. And so Dr. Silkworth knew that Bill and the men who started following the program that Bill was following, which was actually from the Oxford groups at the time, were recovering. I mean, and that was such a miracle at the time for us you know, chronic alcoholics who couldn't put the drink down, to all of a sudden being able to do so. And you know, in Bill's story, you know, he talks about Ebby coming to see him, and Ebby coming to see Bill was, you know, our first awareness that one alcoholic could help another alcoholic to finding a power greater than themselves and the solution to alcoholism. And what Ebby said to Bill on page 12 was, why don't you choose your own conception of God? And Bill got it. The statement hit him hard. It melted the icy intellectual mountain. And he said it was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more of me, nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. Would I have it? Of course I would. He was desperate. You know, when y'all said you had a solution for alcoholism and that you could help me, I said, of course I want to stay here. I mean, I wanted never to have to go back to where I was living. And then Bill took the steps from step 3 forward on page 13. And you know, in the 12 and 12 it says, wait, I want to say it right. There is a direct linkage among self-examination, meditation, and prayer. Taken separately, these practices can bring much relief and benefit, but when they are logically related and interwoven, the result is an unshakable foundation for life. And you know, so that is the the amazing interaction between steps 10, 11, and 12. And I'm going to talk about that too. But, on page 13, when Bill took the steps, this is how he describes step 10. He said, I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. And I really was confused with that line, and I have had to, it has, the meaning of it has changed for me over the years. And, that's the thing about this big book. Every time I read it, I have a new experience of it. And then Bill said, I was to sit quietly when in doubt, asking only for direction and strength to meet my problems as he would have me. And, Bill used a power greater than ourselves when he wrote the steps, but, his conception of God being God became very obvious as he, continued to write the book. And so he said, never was I to pray for myself except as my request bore my usefulness to others. And then, of course, the condition for Bill was on page 14, simple but not easy, a price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. So, see, that self-centeredness was the alcoholism that I said stood between me and my kids, me and being able to show them the love that I had for them, me being able to live peacefully in a home with my husband, to be grateful for my mother who had taken care of my kids for 5 years until I could stop drinking. And so, I love Bill's story. At first I looked for the differences instead of the similarities, but the way that he describes his the growth of his experience with God, I think is so beautiful. And so, all through steps 1 till 3, Bill shows that it is vital to have a conception of God that works for each of us. And then the willingness for us to surrender to that power greater than ourselves in step 3. And and there's a solution. Dr. Young describes what happens to us, what the change in us is when we have a spiritual experience. And he says ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. That was so true for me. And then, what always makes me cry is that statement on page 28 about our new experience of God. And it says, we in our turn sought the same escape with all the desperation of drowning men. What seemed at first a flimsy reed had proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. A new life had been given us, or if you prefer, a design for living that really works. And then our Bill gives us we in step 3, he gives us the bad news first. And the bad news is what we look like in self-will. And then he turns it over. I think we're kind of like our coins that we get to show our sobriety. You know, one side is my ego and the other side is my spirit. And I can either be living from ego or I can be living from spirit. And I had a teacher that I love so much, and his favorite saying was, "Oh, I just changed my mind." Well, to change my mind is to go from my awareness of that I'm digging myself in deeper with ego and then asking God for help. I can change it this quick. So, you know, then we have, you know, on the top of 63, that new employer. He gives, you know, first off, he had shown us the little actor, and here in God's world, we're the actor, but God is the director. And how are we going to know what our script is to be for today? We got to ask. And how are we going to know? We got to be still. And well, at least I have to be still and ask and wait for an answer. My sponsor, Gwen, is a voracious reader. She's always coming up with new spiritual books that we just absolutely have to read. So I read a lot of spiritual literature. And one of my favorite statements is from Thomas Keating. And he says, if you're having trouble with meditation, all you got to do is close your eyes and wait for God to let you know who he is. And man, I was having trouble at the time because I'm a flit brain and that has not gone away. So, you know, throughout my sobriety, I have had to use guided meditations. You know, I'll set my timer and just think, oh God, I'm so glad I don't have to start over, because I'd be here all day, you know, when I set the timer, because my brain just, you know, continues to go. But when I sat there and I waited for God to introduce himself, I promise you, I was totally still. I was so engulfed in that anticipation of God that I was quiet. And you know how God introduced himself? In total peace. It was just a feeling of peace. And it was so beautiful. I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't to feel like that. And that's what happened that first time. Okay. And so the reason I said I wanted to go through the book like this is that, you know, we have, I mean, I was so concerned that I wasn't doing it right and I wasn't doing it good enough. And that, you know, I was never going to really get the program. And I would hear speakers and they sounded so spiritual, you know, or the old timers in my group, and they would sound so wonderful. And I thought, oh, I'll never have that. I'll never have that. And I like to tell my newcomers that they can have the same thing today that I have. All they got to do is seek it. God does not make too hard terms with us when we seek him. And I know that that's true, you know, no matter where we're at in our sobriety. And so, you know, in the fourth step, on page 67. So here, you know, we're looking at the manifestations of self. We got to get rid of this stuff so that we can have a relationship with God. We got to get rid of this stuff, whether we're doing our first, fourth step, or we're doing a 10th step today, and we got some resentment, or we got some fear. We got to get rid of these things so that we can have that connection. Because I promise you that if I have I like how Bubba says it. He says if he has a resentment, he has to turn the radio off in the car so he can think about his resentment. And that's really how it is. We can't think about anything else if we got a resentment. So we got to get rid of them. And Bill gives us specific directions. And it's in the middle of the fourth step. It's between column 3 and column 4. And if you do columns, I don't know, but I do columns. And it says, we on page 67, we ask God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. And we're asking that God change us, not change them. All my life, I wished I could change them, and I was powerless over that. And the only thing I could do was bring my problem to the solution. And my problem is always the bondage of self. And on page, so that's what he tells us to do with resentments. That's how our hearts can change when we begin to pray for a difference in us so that we can be kind to someone else. And I know that's true. I use it on a regular basis because I still get, resentments and fears. And so that was with resentments. On the next page, on page 68, he tells us how to do fear. And when he talks about fear, he says, we trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. And then at the bottom, it says, we ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. And at once we commence to outgrow fear. I love that at once. God knows we are not patient people. And so that at once gives me so much hope, And then, so then on the next page, he talks specifically for the first time, as far as I can, if y'all know a time before, please let me know. But I think it's the first time that he mentions meditation specifically. And that's on page 69 at the bottom of sex. And he says, in meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. Well, first off, he says, in other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. And so he's assuming that we're already trying to practice meditation in this fourth step. So if you're new and you're, just getting into the steps, give it a shot. You don't have anything to lose. And then, in step 5, page 72, we've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path. And those obstacles are always the same, the bondage of self, and that's either resentments, fears, or relationship problems. And then on page 79 in the 9th step, because see, for me, 4 through 9 is the place where we let God do the changing. We've given ourselves to the 3rd step. We've said, okay, God, I'm yours. Show me what to do. And then we use this book and the guidance of a sponsor to get us through to step 9, where we begin to make our amends. And on page 79, he says, reminding ourselves that we have decided to go to any lengths to find a spiritual experience. We ask that we be given the strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. And then we get to step 10. Well, here's meditation again in the 9th step on page 83. You know, as we make amends to someone that's particularly difficult, it says their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that our own actions have been partly responsible. So we clean house with the family, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. So it doesn't matter where you're at in the steps, you're going to find that reference to meditation. And then, you know, going back to that idea that step 10 and step 11 are dependent on each other. And the reason to me that they're dependent on each other is exactly what we talked about in steps 4 through 9. It says we have to set right. We continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. That's assuming that we're going to be screwing up. And when we screw up, we have a way to take care of our problems using step 10. And we look for our mistakes. And it says, we have entered the world of the spirit. And what does that mean? That means that I am in total awareness that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, and so are you. And when I know that about myself, and I know that about you, and I know that we're just here having this human experience, it gives me some compassion for myself and compassion for you as well. That, you know, we're not going to do this perfect. We're not going to do life perfect. You know, we've been here I've been here for 38 years, and I've been through a lot of different circumstances of my life. And, you know, the decades have always been a big change for me. You know, right now I'm entering the 70s, and I'm not real good at doing this yet, you know, because my mind is still like 35 when I got here, maybe even younger, but my body isn't. And I'm having to adjust to this body. I was trying to make it work like it worked, you know, 20 years ago. And that was disastrous. So, you know, I had to have a knee replacement, and this surgery fell and broke my wrist, shattered my wrist. And, you know, because I'm just trying to go too fast, do too much. So my point is saying that is that I'm in a new phase of life, and we go through these new things. You know, we you know, get married, we have kids, we have relationship problems, we might get a divorce, we might go or we might lose a spouse or a child. That's what happened to me. To us, we lost our daughter Katie when we were 2 years sober, and that's when I got Gwen. And isn't it a miracle? You know, I got Gwen. I was 2 years sober. I was just totally gone from God. I couldn't understand why God would let that happen, you know, that Katie would be gone. And then Gwen came into my life, and guess what? Gwen had lost a 7-year-old daughter too. And She said that it had been the beginning of her drinking, but she had never been able to grieve the loss of Keita until she got sober. So, her helping me was a wonderful experience for her as well. I believe, and that's the serendipity of God. God is always, when he works for one of us, anyone we touch, can benefit as well. I love the book, the ripple effect, because we do send out those ripples, whether they're good or whether they're not so good, and as long as I'm working with others, I have a heck of a lot better shot. But let's see, is it time? I'm sorry, how much time do we have? 5 minutes. Okay. So, I just, if you're new, just keep listening, keep looking within, because, when Bubba read about the spiritual experience, he said, we find that we had tapped an unsuspected inner resource. All that time I was looking out there for God, and all that time he was hiding right here. And so, I just encourage everyone, if you're having a struggle, just don't give up. Find somebody who's on fire, let them sit down with you and share their experience. And we can make it through anything. I know that. And I again appreciate so much y'all letting me share. I hope that I was close enough on the topic, to be useful. And I love you all. Thank you so much.
Come on up.
Hi, family. My name is Alice. I'm a grateful member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Helen, I really appreciated your sharing it. And as you were unfolding your topic through showing us how the book leads us to this consciousness of the contact, I really got an even deeper respect for you and the program that you work. So thank you. Here's I have a two-part question. One is my understanding of, first I want to say, yes, it's hidden right there between column 2 and 3. That's where it's hidden. It's hidden right there between column 2 and 3. When I realize that, like the person that I'm mad at, I'm sick too. We the same. Then I have to get down off my high horse. Oh, I'm mad about that. But there it is, hidden between 2 and 3. Thank you for that. So my two-part question. One is that over time, I've come to understand meditation in the book in many ways to be contemplation. That not the meditation like, breathe deeply, right? Sometimes, but this contemplation. And so I want your reaction to that. The second thing that I want to ask you about is, how do you support the people, you talked a little bit about it, that you work with that are brand new and not being overwhelmed with the profoundness of this, and help them get to the simplicity of what it is, because it can be a lot for new people. And so I always like to ask the speakers, like, how do you translate what you know to new people? And thank you again for coming and being with us tonight.
Just try unmuting now.
Okay. So thank you, Olis, for the question. And For me, contemplation today, I believe that I desire to have a new experience of God every day. Because God, when I was first sober, I tried to keep God in a box because this made sense to me. So I'm going to keep it like this. And it didn't work that way. So today, contemplation for me is sitting, being still. I still set a timer and I wait for God to introduce himself. That's what works for me. And as far as my newcomers, I didn't get to that part in the book because I ran out of time, but pages 86, 87, and 88 were my Bible when I was first sober. And, at some point, and Bubba talks about this, I'm sorry, honey, I know you're going to talk next month, but, he says that for so long we read this. We read pages 86, 87, 88, our nightly review, and then our morning look at our day. And instead of reading it, we began to practice it. And that's what I like to suggest to my newcomers is they take it line by line, and so that is what I give to my newcomers, because this is a good way for them to start. And I specifically talk about the top of page 87, where it says, we're going to have an occasional inspiration, and so, and we're not, and my first sponsor used to say this all the time, Helen, you better pay attention or you're going to miss the whole thing. And I didn't know what she meant, but what she meant was, God's presence in my life. And if I pay attention today, back then, in the middle, God is always showing up. That's all I have with that.
Thank you, Alice. Helen, if you just leave yourself unmuted, or if somebody wants to co-host her so that she can unmute herself, that'd be great. Okay. Dina T, come on up.
Hello, I'm Dina, alcoholic. Thank you so much, Helen, for your lead. I loved it. I felt like I was sitting in your living room. It was just so homey. And when you talked about praising and then having a God and having a connection, that is one of my problems of being raised religious. I never really even thought about having a connection. It was all about praising God, And so that's what's been so nice about AA is having that connection. And you said a lot of stuff that that first part of when you read out of the 12 and 12, I have no clue where that was. I'd love to be able to look that up again. I guess that was off step 11, right? I guess. Okay. If you want to throw the page number out there, that'd be great. And then please. And that seeking God, man, it just some days reading this and giving it over to God, but man, some days a song will come on and it's all about God, and then I open up my reading stuff and it'll all be that connection, and then I gotta get in the car. It's just boom, boom, boom all day long, and those are great days. And then all my other days are really good too. And I just want to thank you for everything. Thank you. And I look forward to Bubba next week, even though you said something about what he's going to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dina. It's on page 98, that direct linkage, and it's right across from the St. Francis prayer, which is on 99.
Okay, thank you so much, Dina. And Marilyn, come on up.
Thank you. My name is Marilyn. I am an alcoholic. And Helen, gosh, I just thank you for letting me sit at your feet this past hour. And no, you really, it just
Heard that,
was
huh?
such a spiritual vibe that I was just like there. You just brought me all the way in. I love your spirit because I could feel it through the monitor, modem to modem, as the book says. Well, you said a few things that, really stood out, and I wrote down, because when you talked about on page 13 that I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within, and I was to sit quietly within doubt, asking for the right direction, to help me with my problems as God would have me be. And you went on to say some more things, but I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within. And sometimes I can recognize my thinking by the new God consciousness after I've done something. Sometimes I can see it and I know that it had to be God because I did the right thing, right? If I do the right thing, is God, because I usually do the wrong thing. So I can see it kind of like after. I'm trying to see a better way, and maybe I'm answering my own question. It could be meditation, but how do I, before the action, before the thought, test my thinking? Is it just like asking? Is it God to help me? I'm sure that's a way, but could you just touch that just a little bit? Testing my thinking by the new God consciousness. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Marilyn. That was very nice of you to say. And, testing my thinking for me is the use of step 10, because step 10 says we have entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. Continue to watch. So we're watching ourselves,
Okay.
and we're watching for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And then when they crop up, it doesn't say if they do. And if I watch my thinking all day long, I can tell you, if I just give it like two possibilities, my thinking is either selfish or it's unselfish. And if it's and I can tell you at the end of the day, unfortunately, I usually have more selfish than I have unselfish. So I'm having to scramble at the end of the day to try to catch up. No, I'm just joking. But what I'm finding out is that is my segue into God, because it's a whole different experience of God now, because when I see all the wrong thinking that I have, I mean, I would love to say I'm free of judgment, I'm free of fear. I'm not. My mind is still there, and it's still judging and all of this, but as it goes through, I can say, okay, God, this is yours, because please redirect me. I say that all day long. Please redirect me, because if I'm watching, I'm going to see all that selfishness. And that is then when I go into meditation, I have a God that loves me, forgives me, is there to change me, because I can't, even if I see this stuff, I can't change myself, so I have to allow God. And so where am I going to do that? In meditation. So I see it in step 10, I acknowledge it, I give it to God, and then I do my meditation and allow God to change me. And that's one of the things that Gwen is staying on me about. Let's see, Helen, how you doing with that? And sometimes I gotta call her because I can't get it to go away. And when I can't get it to go away, I better be on the phone calling for somebody. That's all. I hope that answered.
Oh, okay, great, wonderful. Thank you, Marilyn. Lana S., can you come on up and share with us?
Hi, everyone. Lana, alcoholic. Helen, thank you so much. And it's so funny, Philip, because I was like, I'm going to ask her this question. And then you said, so thank you. Helen, the way you share is like sitting in a room with a friend. And that was just so like, just nice. Just really, really nice, you know, and really simple. You made it seem like just good old common sense, y'all, you know, and I really enjoyed that. And I was thinking about, my question is, because I believe when we worked the 10th and 11th step, for an example, yesterday I was at our granddaughter's birthday party, and I knew I had to go to detox to meet the speaker. And my daughter had said, I'm not going to ride with you. So I was like, okay, then I can stay later because I'm not dropping you off. Then she says, oh, okay, I want you to take me home. And I'm thinking, when it was all said and done, I was running behind. And yet I arrived at the detox 10 minutes early. And there's something that me and my husband say, and we got it from a friend of ours in AA. When we're about God's business, God's about us, right? And so do you think that like when you're doing what you're supposed to do to help God's kids, the way is made without any fear, without any rushing, without blame? Because of course I want to do all of that in the car, but I didn't. And I just did what I took her to her apartment. I went to, and I arrived 10 minutes early, but I was already 15 minutes behind. How is that possible? And I didn't run anybody over. I didn't break any laws trying to get my daughter home. It just, that always blows my mind. How about you?
Oh, you know, one of our promises is that we're going to be amazed before we're halfway through. I stay amazed. You know, it's just God. And because, you know, I'll get myself in the situations that I know I cannot get myself out of. And then all of a sudden, with some prayer, some meditation, maybe a talk with Gwen, all of that gets smoothed out. And, you know, yes, Lana, I agree with you so much. You know, God's, you know, he's my infinite spirit. And that means he precedes me with all of my stuff, you know, and provides that answer if I'm looking to him for the answers. That's just for me.
Thank you, Lana. Sally Ann from New Zealand, come on up. Yep, I got you.
Uh-oh. Kia ora, everyone. Kia ora, Helen. Aroha nui. That means big love from New Zealand. That was just magical. And you know, I love coming along to this and hearing myself and people's shares. And probably the question for me now, you talked a lot about connecting with a higher power and meeting that higher power through the steps. One question, it's hard to stick to one. Okay, one, focus. How has that grown? Like if you could, in 1 minute or less, if you could say this was what God meant to me, or the God I met when I came in, can you describe what God is today in this 24 hours? Thanks.
Okay. Well, you know, I told you where I started with my real connection with God, and that was my connection with Santa Claus. So I had a long way to go. But, you know, today I mean, you know, I was nervous I'm always nervous when I gotta share my experience, strength, and hope. And, you know, I don't know why, because I've done it a lot, and God always takes over and the message gets brought. But you know, when I ask for relief from the bondage of self, God has given that to me. You know, and that's and because my life changes on a daily basis, my needs, my experiences, everything, you know, I get to experience God in a different way, but he's always there, always when I pay attention, so I don't miss the whole thing. That's all, Sally Ann. Thank you. And, you know, I want to just say one thing, you know, it is like sitting with friends, because you are my family, you know, and whether it's in person or whether it's right here, I know that our, you know, our hands may not be able to touch, but our spirits do. And I love y'all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sally Ann. Desha or Desha, please come on up.
Mhm.
Hi, I'm Deshay. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Deshay.
I love you, Bubba. I have walked my recovery journey with these two lovely people, and I'm so grateful to both of them. Helen, I would love to ask you, what do you do when you come to a point in your life and you feel that you've somehow lost your connection to God?
Well, you know, I used to say that, you know, and Gwen says it. My Gwen says, you know, she's well, I'm not going to say how old you are, Gwen, but you got 53 years of sobriety. And she tells me, and she lives in this little house and she doesn't go out. Everybody comes to her because they all want what she has. But she says, Helen, I have to surrender all day long. Well, you know, that's it for me. That's what, and I used to have to surrender. I would call it, you know, running into the wall going 90 with my hair on fire. That was the only way when I was new that I could surrender. And since then, and you know, I think you know, surrender and humility are kind of related. And you know, it talks about humility in the 12 and 12. It says that you know, we get humility through humiliation, and then after a while we get humility because we desire the effects. And I mean, I had a really big thing. You know, I mentioned that, you know, I'm in my 70s and my health has been giving me issues. And, you know, summer before last, I had some real bad pain, and I didn't know what to do with it. And I kept saying, you know, God, fix this, please fix this. And it went on day after day after day. And finally, I just was lying in my bed and I said, God, I don't know what to do. Would you please come between me and this pain so that I can have that experience of your presence? Because all I could feel was pain. I couldn't feel God, you know. But when I said that prayer, when I asked God to come between me and the pain, and I think it could be physical pain, emotional pain, mental pain, whatever kind of pain it is, if we ask God to come between us and that pain, what happened for me was it started to release. And I immediately felt God's presence when I asked. Because, you know, the last thing we think to do is to ask. And it's, you know, such a simple thing. And that's it. I just have to ask and let God show me. Let God show me. That's all I have. I love you, Deshay.
Thank you, Deshay. Kingsley T from the Bronx, come on up.
Wow. Good evening, everybody. My name is Kingsley. I'm an alcoholic. I want to guys, such a wonderful meeting. Helen, fantastic. I like to take the journey. That's a wonderful journey, inside you, because I'm listening and I'm right there with you. And there are certain aspects of how you learned it, how you practice it. That, I don't find many people aware of it. And then that's that fourth step there between the third and the fourth column. And there's something happening there, and it's all directions in the book. It's not like it's just how clearly, after studying for a while, it becomes really clear that after those three columns, which just seem to be simple for all alcoholics, it seems to be simple. I can tell you who did it to me, what happened, and how it affected me. But here it starts to tell me to take a different tact. Now looking at people, and there it is, people. So now it's my relations, right, with the outside world and all these people, all these things I've been drinking over, all these people I said, people, institutions I'm pissed off at. You said something that this is like the second time I encountered a prayer, other than the third step prayer in this book, when I was going through it, and I wasn't a believer. I wasn't a believer until I got to this point, and I began to do this, and it hit me that meditation, although mentioned on page 60, where you said right there on page 69, as meditation written, I realized that when you took us back to this, when you was going through this fourth step here, looking at the inventory it's my inventory, it's me. You understand? I realized something. There is no way I could come up with a truthful fourth column if I don't go to God, because it's God who reveals to me the part that I played. And it's very interesting to me, and I'm listening to you, and I said, man, you didn't make it up. Somebody else realized it also, that I have to go to God before I'm able to do a fourth column, because the solution isn't me. I found it. And in that, then you went to the fifth step, then you went to the fears inventory, and I recognized that because now I have a slight trust in that power, it says in the fears that I trust infinite God. So I'm not afraid. These things are connected. They are connected, and fears obviously drive resentments, most of them. But there is a tie. There's a connection here, and the connection is that, like you said, it's difficult day to day. It was difficult day to day to put my faith and trust into something, even though this worked for me. But over these last 8 years, I find that it's a working part of my mind. Like I don't really think about it anymore, because to question it means that which I've gone through, I'm losing it. That's just for me. This is how seriously I must take it. I don't push this on anybody like that, because it's for me and how I'm working it. But I thank you for that, because there's so much clarity in the simplicity of how this works. That the more I study it, the less I understand, the less I know, because it's living for the first time in my life. I don't really have a question. I just want to thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Kingsley.
Thank you, Kinsley. And when you were talking about that, you made the hair stand up on my arms, because it's such when what I've seen is with new people who feel like they have resentments that they can never get over, and if they, I'll take them back to the third step, do you want this? You said you were going to trust God, and your belief is going to get stronger as you trust him. So say this prayer and let's see what can happen. And then they do their fourth column, because they can't do it until, like you say, until that their heart gets changed, and that has to happen through God.
Thank you again, Kingsley. Suzanne Westland, come on up.
Susan.
Hi, everybody. My name's Susan, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Susan.
Good to see you all. Oh, it's so good to see you, Helen, and nice to meet you, Bubba. It's so good to be here. There's something about the heartstrings of Alcoholics Anonymous and people that we meet and how we grow together and I guess the sunlight of the spirit by other people's perceptions and how their understanding of it comes to me, and I just feel that closeness. And Helen has a way and had a way this evening and previously for me that just rings true. There's the gifts and the miracles of Alcoholics Anonymous that just work through people. And I just am so grateful for what AA has done and given me in a way that I never ever could have even imagined, because I'm really good at doing everything but prayer and meditation, not knowing what it is I'm resisting so much, because the benefit since I stopped that has been so great. And yet I'm the last person to usually know what's going to work best for me. And I came to all of this through coming to understand the big book better by finding out that it was written and there was all kinds of stuff that was true about me in there. And Helen hit along a lot of it and how it makes sense after a while. And yet I miss it until I'm supposed to hear it. And so I'm so grateful for the people that carry a message of wait and hope for people like me that are just defiant by nature, and thinking if I do it my way, it's going to be, I don't know, over and over it was repeated that, it doesn't work, but I'm the last one to know that. I'm just, yeah, I don't know why I don't get it. I just get in my way, and prayer and meditation helps so much turn that into a place of benefit. But I don't come to those places without you guys and people sharing their experience, strength, and hope. So thank you, Helen, and thank you everybody who's shared and is on the meeting.
Thank you, Susan. And
Thank
Susan is sitting in her sewing room. And when I was in Alaska a couple of weeks ago, she shared her sewing room with me. She is a talented seamstress, and she even made a bag for me. And I was going to pick it up and bring it with me, Susan, and I left it in the other room, but it's just one of my favorite things. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. So Helen, we have a minute left, or 30 seconds. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with before we close this portion of the meeting off?
One of the things that I didn't mention is that whenever we can, Bubba and I do prayer and meditation together. We always, no matter what new book we're reading, we always go through pages 86, 87, and 88. We know them by heart, but that doesn't change the fact that we need to practice them today. And I'm so grateful to be able to share that with him, considering where we came from. And, there was a time I had a severe mental breakdown, and I couldn't read, I couldn't pray, I couldn't do anything. And Bubba had this newcomer, and he said he couldn't do prayer and meditation. So Bubba invited him to come over and do prayers with him every morning. And I would, creep down the steps and sit on the bottom step where they couldn't see me and just listen, because when I couldn't pray, their prayer worked for me. And so no matter what circumstances we find ourselves in, God will provide a solution. That's all.
Thank you, Helen. And that concludes this portion of the meeting. And I'll now pass the meeting back over to Teresa, our chair. Are you there, Teresa?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Stop.